When a Komodo dragon spots a water buffalo, it is looking at an animal 10 to 20 times its own size. Taking down prey that massive requires a highly specific strategy. The initial encounter rarely ends in a kill. In fact, a water buffalo escapes a Komodo dragon's first bite with a 100% success rate. But a few days later, that same buffalo will wander off and die. For decades, biology textbooks offered a terrifying explanation for this delayed kill. We were taught that the dragon's drool was packed with lethal rotting flesh bacteria. The theory went that the predators simply delivered a toxic bite, then waited for the infection to do the heavy lifting. But if you look for the data supporting that mechanism, it doesn't exist. The entire concept traces back to a single 1980 book, where the authors simply guessed that bacteria might be used as a weapon, without offering any evidence to back it up. Despite a total lack of proof, that guess became biological gospel. When modern researchers finally tested the saliva and found something entirely different, the scientific establishment fought back hard, protecting a familiar story over empirical evidence. The bacteria theory began to unravel when toxicologist Brian Fry studied the dragon's saliva. Instead of a mouthful of rotting meat, he found pristine teeth and bacteria levels lower than your average dog. The dragons also carry powerful antimicrobials in their blood, meaning they possess an incredibly clean, highly functioning immune system. That creates an obvious problem. If the lizard's mouth is actually quite clean, what is giving the water buffalo fatal cases of sepsis? The answer lies in geography. Water buffalo are not native to these dry Indonesian islands. They were introduced by humans. In their native marshlands, a threatened buffalo's instinct is to flee into deep, clean water to escape predators. But on the rocky islands of Komodo National Park, the only water available during the dry season are small, stagnant pools. These shallow watering holes bake in the tropical sun and quickly fill with animal feces. When a bitten buffalo follows its instinct and bails into the nearest water source, it is plunging open wounds into a warm sewage pond. The lethal infection that follows has absolutely nothing to do with the Komodo dragon. For over 30 years, the scientific community credited this lizard with a biological weapon when they were actually just observing an invasive species dying from an ecological mismatch. With the bacteria myth cleared away, Fry's team used MRI scans and DNA analysis to figure out what the Komodo dragon is actually using to secure a kill. This diagram shows the true arsenal, a complex network of venom glands located not in the upper jaw like many snakes, but entirely within the dragon's mandible. But the venom is only half the strategy. The mechanical attack comes from 60 curved teeth, each up to an inch long. The dragon slashes and pulls back, using those serrated edges, which are reinforced with a coating of iron, to rip massive chunks of flesh and sever major arteries. As the teeth tear the tissue, the glands and the lower jaw pump venom directly into the fresh wounds. This chemical payload contains toxins that prevent blood from clotting and cause a massive drop in blood pressure, quickly sending the bleeding prey into shock so it cannot run away. And that menacing drool dripping from its jaws? It is neither venom nor bacteria. It's just a thick mucus. Because Komodo dragons swallow huge, furry portions of their prey whole, they need heavy lubrication to get it down their throats. The Komodo functions as a highly evolved super predator, utilizing a perfectly synchronized tandem system of mechanical shock and chemical warfare. You would expect a discovery this clear to be celebrated. Instead, Fry's team faced severe institutional pushback. Certain zoos labeled the researchers crackpots and refused to participate, while academic journals delayed publishing the findings entirely on ideological grounds. Critics of the venom discovery often point to reports of zookeepers getting bitten. In most of those cases, the humans suffer only minor tissue damage, require zero antivenom, and heal normally with basic antibiotics. But measuring venom by looking at zoo accidents ignores basic animal behavior. A captive bite is usually a defensive dry bite, a quick warning nip. In the wild, a feeding bite involves clamping down and vigorously chewing, which is mechanically required to work the venom from the lower jaw into the muscle. The resistance eventually boiled down to an argument over semantics. Detractors argue that because a Komodo doesn't rely entirely on venom like a cobra, or inject it through hollow fangs, it shouldn't be classified as venomous. By holding on to those narrow definitions, parts of the herpetology world refused to update their understanding. They clung to the old textbook explanations, behaving more like religious adherents protecting a sacred doctrine than dispassionate scientists evaluating new data. With the bacteria myth dismantled, a more sophisticated animal comes into focus, an intelligent predator capable of recognizing individual keepers and engaging in play. For nearly a century, the majestic reality of this apex predator was constrained by a stubborn myth that reduced it to a primitive scavenger. The survival of the bacteria theory suggests that the greatest barrier to biological discovery isn't a lack of evidence, but the human ego's attachment to a familiar story.